Hello, hello, hello. Hey, happy family. You did it. You made it through another week, and now you get to see the next episode of Kernels of Truth, brought to you by Progress Kentucky. Uh, my name is Nate Orshan. I'm guest hosting tonight, and I'll introduce you to my co-host in a couple of minutes. But I want to just let you know that this week, we're going to be covering some of the last gasps of the Kentucky legislature. That is right. Our 60-day session done, wrapped up with Sine Die, which, by the way, sidebar, I took 4 years of Latin. I will never be able to pronounce a Sine Die. It's Sine Die, right? Okay, just so we get that clear. A Sine Die in the rearview mirror. And we're going to check on how much damage has been done to critical issues such as criminalizing homelessness and ballooning prison populations in our state, which already locks up a higher percentage. Dig that. Kentucky already locks up a higher percentage of our population than any democratic nation on earth, right? On a per person basis. We're number one. We're number one. Okay, let you soak that one up there. And then we're going to check in with our returning guest, your friend of the show, Tamarra Wieder. Oh gosh, I should have checked with her. I'm sorry, Tamarra. Hope you're not listening. Kentucky State Director with Planned Parenthood Alliance Advocates Kentucky, and we'll hear from her how the session weighed in on reproductive freedom and abortion rights. And then we'll close with our call to action. But first, are you ready to help turn Kentucky purple? Yes, you are. As the bad bills pile up in the Kentucky House and Senate, it's clear there's still lots of work to do in our state to win better electoral outcomes for our Commonwealth. We hope you'll do what? Support Progress Kentucky in our efforts to do just that. Make a contribution right now via our secure online website, Act Blue, to help turn Kentucky purple. $5, $50, $500, it all adds up. So the URL for that is secure.actblue, ACTBLUE, actblue.com/donate/progress KY, all one word. And now it's time to check in with our co-host. Let us know who and where you are and what are you protesting today. Oh, and you there on the internet, we mean you too. Let's hear what you are protesting today. Feel free to put it in the chat while we're sharing ours. So I am Nate Orshan, coming live and direct from Kit and my home here in Frankfurt. It's just a stone's throw from the governor's mansion and the the GA, many of whom I would wish to throw some stones at this week. And my sign says, a momnibus for moms of any gender. We'll get to that in a little bit. Doug Price, come on down.
Yes, I am a co-host tonight. I'm coming to you from Harrison County. Cynthiana is a county seat. It's a beautiful town. If you get a chance, come check us out. I'm kind of wearing mine. I have my Kentucky Public Retirees t-shirt on. I am a Kentucky state government retiree, and one of the things that had been proposed for this past legislative session was a 13th check for retirees who have not had a cost of living adjustment for over 13 years. It almost made it to the finish line, but it was, taken out of the bill with no public viewing available in a privately held conference committee meeting. So that's my protest.
It deserves at least that. Yeah. So first of all, my condolences for that. That you hear a lot everywhere that representation matters, because it does. And so having people in a certain category makes it more likely that legislation will take place that helps them instead of hurts them. And I wonder, have you ever noticed whether a significant amount of the General Assembly are themselves state employees or retirees? Is that a thing you've ever seen?
I don't know. I guess there are state representatives, senators who have worked for state government before. In a lot of cases, what has happened in the past, you have a legislator who works for several years and at a salary level that is, I don't know, whatever it is, $45,000, $50,000, and then takes a state government job at the end of uh, their term as a legislator, and they supersize their state government retirement.
Right. So they would have to be exceedingly ethical to turn down those kinds of opportunities and just rely on their state retirement benefits.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. All right. And as we know, as we're about to hear, there's not a lot of ethical people on at least one side of the political spectrum in the General Assembly. So let's take it to our news of the week. There it is. News of the week. I'm into echoes tonight. I don't know why. And Doug, would you do us all the honor of turning off the echo machine and give us that legislative rundown?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Tonight, plan to provide an update on the Progress Kentucky Bill Tracker that was faithfully updated throughout the session, with the final update happening yesterday. The last day was on Monday, but I waited a day just to make sure I had good results. We had 14 House bills that we thought were bad bills, and 3 of those passed. And we had 11 bills, Senate bills, that we thought were bad bills, and only 1 of those passed. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about those 4 bills that passed. HB 2 is the constitutional amendment that, if approved by the voters this coming November, will allow the legislature to write laws to divert public school funds to private and church schools. Progress Kentucky will be working hard to defeat this atrocious bill. I would think that any Democrat running for election in November would be certain to cite their opponent's views on giving money to private schools. Those legislators who supported the effort must be held accountable at the ballot box. HB 5, the writers of this bill referred to the bill as the Safer Kentucky Act. I like to call the bill the Incarcerate Kentucky Act, as this bill creates more imprisonment, resulting in tremendous cost to society, both in dollars and harm to people. The sponsors continually cited outdated and or outlandish sources to promote this scare tactic, as far as needing to pass this bill that puts more people in jail and also puts homeless people in jail. In the years to come, prison costs will skyrocket, resulting in dollars being taken away from many other areas. HB 18. Under HB 18, landlords can refuse to rent to tenants who pay with public housing assistance, such as Section 8 vouchers. It also stops cities like Louisville and Lexington from enforcing their current bans on housing and source of income discrimination. The governor vetoed this bill, and the legislature overrode his veto, along with every other bill he vetoed during the veto override period. And the thing about this, the legislature oftentimes says that they want to be able to provide for local choice, let localities make their own decisions. But then on this bill, they wanted to take that away because they feel like it's better. SB 120, that's the one Senate bill that we opposed that actually passed. This could be called the We Are Tough on Crime Party bill. A 15-year-old who has committed a felony could be treated as an adult related to sentencing guidelines. Lock them up and throw away the key is the logic. Move them out of society. Is it interesting that now in Kentucky, a 15-year-old has mentally developed enough to be tried as an adult, but the Republican-controlled legislature won't allow parental decision related to transgender issues? Often cited is that a child's brain is not developed enough, even to quoting from out-of-state folks, that 24 years old is more appropriate for children to be making decisions on their own. So if a 15-year-old makes a decision on their own to commit a violent felony, then we're going to lock them up, throw away the key. The others I want to talk about constitutional amendments. I mentioned one of those already. There were 25 proposed and only 2 crossed the finish line. The one of them that crossed was only allow citizens to vote and then allows the legislature to pass laws to divert public school funding to private church schools. And here is a sad fact. Out of the over 1,200 bills proposed, a Democratic legislator was the primary sponsor of 7 bills that were passed. In my opinion, we need to remember those bad laws when we vote in November. Additionally, I have heard that the moderate Republican legislators are concerned that they may be overtaken by the far-right conservative legislator push. I'm thinking maybe Pac-Man. They may be devoured. Back to you, Nate.
But when you say, but seriously, when you say overtaken in what way? Like in terms of policy or in primaries and elections?
In primaries and elections, and then instead of trying to control them by putting them on, taking away committee assignments or whatever,
Right.
They will not be in control. The far right wing legislators will be in control, and if that happens, I mean it's really bad.
Yeah, no kidding. You don't want to feel sorry for a moderate Republican because they still, go along to get along for the most part, or they do something mildly okay, like Westerfield, and then they bow out. Yeah, thanks for that. It's quite a list of bad things. HB5, the safer so-called, was it Safer Kentucky Act? That one really gets under my skin, just for all the wrong reasons. The basically legalizing not having a home, these kinds of, what is it, the maximum, is that the one with the 3 strikes, or was that the whatchamacallit, 20? Do you know
Oh,
what?
I'm not sure. I think
Okay,
it's
I
yeah.
thought I heard on my old Kentucky pod that they were going to have a 3 strikes, but that's the other part of all this too, is like you think what's going on with the bill, and then it's changed at almost literally the last minute before it that has to be filed and all that. So what you thought you knew about a bill earlier in the year may not be true anymore. But just alone on the homelessness illegalization, if you will, that just is just these are the people who are supposed to be making policy that gives us more houses and more housing, so people don't have to be on the street, and somehow it helps them with their income so they don't have to spend everything on housing, but yada yada yada. Anyway, yeah, there was a lot of heartbreak, and thank you so much. And people should know Doug put a lot of time into tracking the bills, and I think now that you have it sort of down to a science this year, do you think you'll be able to keep it going in other years, and will it be any easier?
Well, we'll have to see about that.
Doug's leaving the state, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, Vermont. Just kidding. All right. Well, thank you so much. I will. I think the microphone goes to me now for another story, and this one rhymes with omnibus, but it actually is momnibus. Yes, that's right. We spoke about this a couple weeks back. So there was this bill, the so-called momnibus bill, that had a lot of great things going on for people who are pregnant. However, at the last minute, some ultra-conservative types added some additional language that basically was going to guilt pregnant people into sort of sorry, let me back up. There was going to guilt people who were pregnant who had a baby that was going to not a baby, a fetus that was going to die either in utero or shortly after it was delivered. and it was going to basically, where's the, I'm looking for the stuff I had here on it, and of course it's tough. Anyway, they were going to, yes, okay, you would automatically, so the deal was, thank you, yes. I'm pinch hitting tonight, by the way, so if I'm bad, it's because I'm bad. So you would automatically have been referred to what they call perinatal palliative care services, so comfort measures for the dying fetus. And, how could that not but be another sort of guilt factor to someone who's already going through a terrible, terrible situation, for which abortion is really like pretty much the only solution other than this palliative stuff. So the good news, my friends, is first of all, Momnibus passed finally. And best of all, as you might guess, it did not have that additional verbiage about the perinatal palliative care. So what does Momnibus do? It does a lot of really great things. So it adds pregnancy as an official qualifying life event so that a pregnant person can get health insurance. And some insurance providers already did this, but not all of them. So this is going to require that all health insurance providers in the Commonwealth insure someone who's pregnant. Yay! Very important. Not a small thing to sort of make fun of. Then it establishes a hotline so that any pregnant person's healthcare provider can use it and get them some psychological care if they think it's necessary. So just it's not, it's just another way to sort of grease the skids towards good mental health care. It's not going to solve a lot of things, but it's a good thing to have, right? And then there's this HANDS program, Health Access Nurturing Development Services program. So it adds this this existing home visitation program called HANDS, and it makes it so that it provides lactation counseling, education about the importance of breastfeeding, and information about safe sleep for babies. That last quote came from a February 12th Kentucky Health News article from Melissa Patrick. And it required that HANDS is available via telehealth as well as at home. So I guess just to wrap this up, delighted that Momnibus got over the finish line, especially with the deletion of that gratuitous sort of anti-abortion stuff. And, we'll also be talking with Tamarra about that in a few minutes as well. But I guess I'll get Doug to chime in as well. Doug, I mean, how do you feel about Momnibus?
The Momnibus bill was one of those with both sides working together, a really great bill. And that's what should happen. Democrats and Republicans, not being Democrats and Republicans, but being people who are interested in the health of the constituency and all that. And then at that last minute, the legislator, I'm not going to call her name, but legislator from Northern Kentucky put some crappy stuff in there. And as luck would have it, that went away. Today I was at a meeting with Bluegrass East chapter, the Kentucky Public Retirees, and we had Representative Agrel Camuel there. And she was talking about that bill, how wonderful that it did finally come together, but it was something that almost got sidetracked at the last minute because of legislator trying to insert awful things in it that just defeated the purpose of the whole bill. So that happens. That shouldn't happen, but it does.
It happens, and it's yeah. I mean, I'm trying to put myself in the head of somebody who sort of sneaks around and inserts these kind of poison pill measures into legislation. It's almost the definition of bad faith action. And we've got one quick little update. So thank you, Doug. And before we get to Tamarra Wieder, who's waiting patiently backstage, this is just a reminder to all y'all. Voter registration deadline. The deadline is this upcoming Monday, April 22nd, Earth Day. And there's competitive primaries all around the states. So things like House Districts 29, 46, 56, 93, hut, hut, hut. So, number one, please register to vote if you haven't already by Monday, April 22nd, and that will set you up for voting in the primaries on May 21st. So, think how good you will feel that you are participating in democracy and making your voice heard. So, and here's a website you can go to, by the way. It's the Secretary of State website. I'll spell it out. VRSWS.SOS, Secretary of State, .ky.gov/OV for Victor RWEB. VRSWS.SOS.ky.gov/OVRWEB. All right. And now, without further ado, we would like to introduce to you, to some of you, to longtime listeners and watchers, you already know her. It's Tamarra Wieder, the Kentucky State Director of Planned Parenthood Alliance Advocates, Kentucky. Tamarra, come on down.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Yay, thank you for
Hi.
joining us. So for any folks who don't know who you are, would you mind telling them and what you do and how long have you been a reproductive rights advocate?
Sure. So I have been with Planned Parenthood for 9 years. I just passed 9 years in my role. I'm the Kentucky State Director for Planned Parenthood Alliance Advocates. And in my role, I manage and oversee our legislative programming, our electoral programming, and our community organizing programming. And so I'm across the state doing lots of work, but my home base is Louisville, Kentucky, and I help oversee my 3 organizers, one based in Louisville, one in Richmond, and one in Western Kentucky near Murray.
Oh man, yeah. So that's quite the stretch there. How often do you guys touch base on what's going on?
My team and I are really in very close communication. So we meet weekly for our weekly check-ins, but we are in very close communication. We actually have our year kind of spread out in trimesters. So our first trimester is the legislative session. Our second trimester is our summer tabling and community organizing focused. And then in election years, our third trimester is our electoral work. And so, we really have it organized via, the season of the year. And so, I'm really excited to move into really what I think we do really well, which is base building and community organizing.
We need that desperately.
Mm-hmm.
So we are very interested in your overall take on how reproductive freedom fared this year's legislative session.
Yeah, it was an emotional roller coaster this session with the omnibus bill in particular. And I'm just so grateful that we were able to get it across the finish line without the anti-abortion antics that played out the last 2 weeks. And as you all were talking about earlier, the bill started off, as one of those, really shining moments of political collaboration, both sides, working together. And then it really fell off the tracks with the amendments that were so polarizing and so shame-based. And then we started to see that play out with other bills. Senate Bill 74 that was sitting in the House had baby Olivia attached to it. We saw, this hijacking of really good maternal health bills get all of these really terrible, egregious amendments. And thankfully, we lots of organizations, were working behind the scenes, and Planned Parenthood was one of them that was really working to remove the amendments and get a clean bill across, which amazingly, we were able to see that happen on the last day of session. And so finishing that off was really, really incredible. And we had one really bad bill for Planned Parenthood cross the finish line, unfortunately. But for my 9 years here, we didn't see the same sort of onslaught of anti-abortion bills move. And I think I know why. It's an election year and anti-abortion bills lose seats. And the Republican Party knows it. and they are taking wind. I think we'll see a lot of them next year when they're not up for re-election. We're going into one of our first, I don't like to say off year. I don't think that we ever really exist now in off years, but we won't have the same sort of election cycle that we've seen in, for a while.
So it sounds like having candidates remind their would-be constituents of the vast difference between their reproductive health advocacy and the opposition would be more of a winning tactic based on what you're saying. So.
Absolutely. And when you look at the No on 2 data, from the precincts, and you can get that data from the Secretary of State's website, you can scrap that data, precinct data, you see really, really interesting information. And one of my favorite ones to tell people, Nancy Tate, Representative Nancy Tate from House District 27, she's really been the leader of all this anti-abortion nonsense in Frankfort, especially this year too. I mean, all of the anti-abortion bills and the movement really and hijacking of these bills that we saw this last few weeks in session was Nancy Tate. Her district voted no on 2. Her district voted for Bashir. And was historically a democratically held seat. And so when I look at what is really important, she's not speaking for her constituents. Her constituents voted against no on 2, and yet she's on this crusade. And when you look at a lot of other, legislators, you're seeing a same story play out, that their votes don't represent their people. Mm-hmm. And we have the data, and then we have the data from the Bashir election as well. And the Bashir election shows another story too that continues to prove that abortion is a winning issue, because that election really turned into another vote on abortion access. And you see that in these districts again. You see it play out, and the electorate doesn't want any more abortion restrictions. They don't want a tax on birth control. They actually, when we're at the doors, they don't like the attacks on trans kids. There's a lot more room to talk here than I think, general people who are running for office have, been so afraid to talk about generally in Kentucky.
Doug, want to?
So what I think I heard was, if I am running against a legislator, I need to make sure they understand how Republicans voted on or tried to insert things into bills that would be something that people would not want to vote for. So,
yeah, I think accountability is key. Making sure that your legislators are held accountable. And one of the things that we do, and it's not actually electoral focused, Planned Parenthood, after legislative sessions, we move into our accountability work, where we go and we knock doors and we do phones in areas to talk to legislators who really moved egregious pieces of legislation. And we talk to their constituents and we let them know what they were up to. And we really have interesting conversations at these doors in Republican controlled areas. And we find, 9 times out of 10 that the general constituent doesn't know what their legislator was doing. They generally just voted for them based on, keeping their roads, paved, or I knew them in high school, or I knew their mom, but they don't follow the legislature like some of us do, really, following every single bill, every single vote. They don't know how they're trying to divide and polarize people. They miss that because most people don't want to watch all of that animosity take place. Or what we also find out is with, Roe falling, a lot of people have a confusion about what's a federal law and what's a state law. And they think that federally abortion was banned and it's not coming from their state legislature. And so we do a lot of education to let them know what the legislators did in the state. And so we find through these accountability conversations, we're able to help empower people to take ownership of their votes later on, or contact their legislators, in the interim, and start, pushing for what they actually want to see in their elected official.
And
That's good. I'm sorry, please.
I just want to follow up. I know I hear what you're saying And I think in a lot of cases, they know who their legislator is, but they don't pay attention to what the legislator is doing. They just know that I see him or her at the grocery store and they've always got a smile on their face and they know who I am. And I see maybe they're on radio or TV every now and then and they're doing good things. So that's what they think and that's how they vote. But they really need to know more about the issues than the individual, I think.
Yeah, and that's what we aim to do with our accountability campaigns. And in the summer, we don't do primary work, and we haven't kicked off our electoral season. We don't really kick off our electoral season with endorsements or any of that until the end of August, and so we're really in a good place to really hit on the accountability pieces without any electoral angle. We're just doing education on what the legislators did during the session. And we find that, people at the doors are very receptive to this. And we have really great conversations. And actually, for my organizers, too, it's one of their favorite things to do before we go into electoral. And this is something that for those watching at home, like we love to have volunteers. Actually, we need volunteers with us. We don't like doing this alone, but it's a great way for you to, start seeing how easy it is to have these conversations at the doors. And actually, it's a great palate cleanser too, when you find out that more people are with you than not.
We're going to add the URL plannedparenthoodaction.org.
I'll give you, it's a different, I'll put in the
oh, okay. Thank
give
you.
Let me grab it for you. I'll give you that link.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
Live and direct, folks. Live and direct.
My pleasure. I'll go ahead and grab that I'm searching through my Slack. I should have had that up.
Yeah, very often we would do the same thing, but I'm glad you got our back. Thank you.
I do. So I got that copied. All right, I'm going to put that in this chat. There you go. And so we have our sort of we haven't fully launched it yet. I'm still adding more of our accountability targets to it, but the website is live. And this is a way that you can
There we go. Oh, good. Okay. Oh, yes. But it is a long URL. So
it is.
I'm not reading that.
Definitely yet. I was finishing this up today.
So if you're a podcast listener listening right now, turn off the podcast, go and look in the comments and see if you can go to that site.
Bitly will be forthcoming.
Right. Definitely. I just to take a second to have my mind blown about the notion that voters, citizens might not know the difference between federal legislation and state legislation, not to mention local ordinances, and that you, a nonprofit organization, need to sort of do this on people's doorsteps. Do you ever feel that the American educational system has sort of failed everybody? Objection, Your Honor. Counsel is leading the witness.
Yeah, no, I think, it just shows how convoluted the system is too, that the system on healthcare has, has failed us, that somebody in another state has more access than we do just based on our zip codes. That shouldn't be how it is. But I think it's also intentional. These legislators are running scared, both federally and locally from their votes. I mean, take Ken Fleming, for example, in District 48, who has a long and storied history voting against abortion access, voting against rape and incest exemptions. But he is in a district that does flip back and forth from Republican to Democrat. And then he did file the exemption bill, a very limited exemption bill, where rape and incest victims only have 6 weeks to seek support.
Oh my goodness.
Where most people don't even know they're pregnant until that time. But he did it because his district is highly competitive, even though he voted no on exemptions on the omnibus anti-abortion bill in 2022. So you have these legislators who are trying to walk back their extremism on these issues, but we have a legacy of voting records on these individuals. Unfortunately for them, we won't let them slide. And especially with his rape and incest exemptions, I mean, most people do not know they're pregnant by 6 weeks. And when we're talking about victims of rape and incest, there's a whole other, cadre of issues in trying to access that care in 6 weeks too. So I could do a whole podcast on that alone. So, the cruelty of the bans, was always the point here. But many of these legislators are realizing that it hurts them politically. And so they're trying to walk it back. They don't want to be on the record. They don't want to have any votes or talk about abortion or have to have it come up. But the fact is, it's impacting people in their communities all across the Commonwealth, and they can't hide from it.
No, and you won't let them, which
we
is
won't.
why we love you guys. So talking about states that are friendly to reproductive rights and the states that aren't. Kentucky is one of a large number, unfortunately, of states that that restrict, right, if not outlaw completely, reproductive health rights. And I wonder how, when you look at the legislative session in Kentucky this year, how did we do compared to some of the other peers that you might know about, like, I don't know, Indiana or Ohio, or, I mean, did we do sort of equally as far as you can tell, or?
I haven't been able to do a full landscape analysis since session just ended Monday, and I'm pretty singularly focused on Kentucky. However, Indiana did take IUDs out of their Medicaid coverage. And
Wow.
So when we're looking at, what happens next for Kentucky, there's still more they can do and will likely do when it comes to reproductive autonomy. We did have 2 bills that were filed this session that sought to give fetuses the rights, what we call personhood, at conception. And they will likely come back next session. This was bills that would have granted fetuses the rights at conception for child support. And they are creating bills that, of course, in principle, we want pregnant people to have access to care, to make sure that they can afford a pregnancy. Of course. I don't think any of us disagree on that. But when you grant the rights of a fetus at conception, you are creating a litany of new legal status that opens up criminalization, surveillance, and many things for the pregnant person to go through. And, talking to family law lawyers across the state too, how do you test for DNA? There actually aren't DNA tests that are safe for the fetus while it's in utero, even though the right was purporting to put all these other tests forward that could test for paternity. There actually aren't safe tests. The only safe test is an amniocentesis, which when I talked to my gynecologist, none of them recommended it because it could cause miscarriage. So when we were looking at like all these different, components of this bill, like they weren't caring about the actual health and safety of the fetus. They were just looking to secure the personhood status of a fetus. And what happens then? What happens? We look at Alabama. You lose access to IVF.
Right.
And Kentucky has the same language from our trigger law legislation from 2019 that Alabama has. So any new law that gets put in place that has additional personhood language, we have to be very careful and, really suspect of, because each new code of law that it gets inserted to, we have bigger problems and new hurdles for pregnant people to undergo. And we know that surveillance really happens in other states. Criminalization happens in other states. So this is another thing that we really have to be careful about and looking to the future of what some of these legislators want to do.
Indeed. Do you guys ever do polling and sort of I guess what I'm asking about is demographics of the people who oppose abortion? Like, is this split down the middle in terms of male, female, leaving aside non-binary gender, or is it skewed?
we haven't done polling this year. Sometimes we do polling like collectively through, we sit at a table, the C4 table, and they've done some polling. We did extensive polling for the No on 2 campaign. And so what we saw was that with, the specific polling on that, we had, I don't remember like the specific gendered components of the polls, but there was, I believe it was like 70% of Kentuckians did not support a ban on abortion. And I believe that was, it was very similar for like men and women and age ranges. I don't remember any significant like drop-offs from that. I'd have to go back.
Right.
It's been a minute since I looked at that poll, but I don't remember any statistically significant differences.
Right. Yeah. I'm guessing it would have jumped out at you probably. Like,
Yeah.
hey, look at this. Yeah. I guess that's good.
I think so. I think, what matters, I think, from that is, people don't like intrusions on their health care. Kentuckians, one of the things I think that really stood out to us from that is that, we are I don't know if this is the workshopped word, but like a liberty state, like, in terms of we want our own health care that is not managed by the government. We don't want the government intruding on our private spaces. And, when, what be it COVID or birth control or, whatever, we don't want the government coming in. And, well, I may not always agree with reasonings on certain components of this. It held fast for abortion rights. They didn't want the government dictating who was in an exam room and telling them what they can and can't do with their body.
It works for me.
Yeah.
Doug, any last questions before we wrap things up?
You kind of touched on this already, but based on what is happening across the U.S., what do you expect is coming our way in the next long session? I don't know on the short session if they can do a whole lot, but what are you looking coming down the pipe?
Yeah, actually, it's the short sessions that we have the worst.
Oh, okay.
Historically. So I'm a little bit nervous for next session. I do anticipate us to see the same bills that were filed this year, the personhood bills, the baby Olivia, the shame-based, forced pregnancy care. But I do worry, looking at Indiana, with the IUDs coming out of Medicaid, I'm really fearful. I've been fearful for a long time on birth control access. Nancy Tate has, signified a lot of interest in attacking birth control. And so I think it's after this presidential and when she's not up for reelection, I think a short session might be, and one where she's not back on the ballot, the following year might be her in for a birth control attack. And, again, the LGBTQ rights, it's been getting worse each year, the attack. So I do anticipate, another session of really heavy attacks. So I think Chris Hartman and I are going to have our hands full next session managing the deluge of just hate, and anti healthcare coming down.
Well,
so vote them out.
Yeah.
It's easier.
Well, we are so glad that you are here and not taking your eyes off of everything.
Thanks for having me.
Tamarra Wieder, thank you so much for joining us on Kernels of Truth.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Thanks.
Good to see you. Night.
Thank you.
Have a good night. All right, so I think it's time for our traditional call to action. And no surprise, it's going to be an urge for the governor to veto something. What we are asking this week is if you could get in touch with the governor, and we'll give you a URL for that as well, and request that he veto SB 191. This is a last gasp that the legislature included, we're calling it a bank shot to advance the interests of continued discrimination and exclusion on campus. So what SB 191 that we would like the governor to veto does is it's an amendment to post-secondary incentive funding that was passed the very last day of the session. The amended language now says that results for students from underrepresented minority groups can't be considered when those dollars are distributed to Kentucky's public universities and community and technical colleges. Can't be. So, and up until then, SB 191 was constructive. But then what this amendment does is it takes things. It happened. One of the objections that we have to it, in terms of, in addition to just to sort of its badness on its face, is that the process was just terrible. It happened at the last minute, and it was way too fast for anyone to have any public input. So it weakens higher education's efforts to ensure that students of all backgrounds are fully welcomed and empowered in public higher education. And we have a lot of public higher education in this state. So let's see, what's that URL? Can we get that URL going? I don't know. Oh yeah, it's a MailChimp thing. We're going to include it in the show notes for you, but it's basically a MailChimp link from the League of Women Voters of Kentucky, asking you to click and let the governor know that you want him to vote to veto SB 191. And that, my friends, I think is the end of the latest episode of Kernels of Truth. And Doug, my dear friend, do you mind taking us out?
Yes, I will. I'd be happy to. Progress Kentucky is a nonprofit organization registered with the Kentucky Secretary of State and organized as a 501c4. We are affiliated with the Individual Project, a Commonwealth Alliance for Voter Engagement, commonly referred to as CAVE. We're also proud members of the Forward Kentucky Network. Progress Kentucky's goal is to educate, organize, increase voter turnout, and advance a progressive agenda through civic engagement. In 2 weeks, Progress Kentucky is proud to announce we'll be hosting a 6-district Democratic primary candidate forum. That'll be on May 1st. Join us. Production of episode 158 was by the wonderful and cherished Annabelle Nagel. Big thanks to Nate Orshan, who wrote and performed our theme songs. You can find more information and music at natosongs.com. If you miss our weekly live stream on Facebook or YouTube, audio podcasts and our show notes are available on Apple, Google, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcast. If you do listen to the pod, please leave us a 5-star review wherever you are listening right now. Logo and some graphic content provided by Couchfire Media. More information can be found at couchfiremedia.com. Hope to see you next week.
And it's not playing, so I'll just sing it out. Do 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 do. Thanks so much, guys. Take care.